Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Intimacy Lab. I want you to pause for a moment and think about that one relationship where you felt like everything about you was appreciated, your time, your effort, your success, your generosity. But if you dared to pull back, even just slightly, something changed, didn't it? The warmth cooled. The smiles disappeared. The connection that seemed so rich suddenly felt transactional. Have you ever had that subtle but gnawing feeling that the woman beside you didn't truly love you, but loved what you represented? The comfort, the protection, the lifestyle, the image. This is not a comfortable truth, but it's one so many men quietly carry. The sense that her gaze, so affectionate, isn't really seeing your soul, it's scanning your resume. In this video, we're going to talk about that deeply uncomfortable question you might not even admit to yourself. Does she love me, or does she love what I offer her? And why is it so easy to confuse the two? This conversation is not about bitterness, it's about clarity, about reclaiming your emotional dignity as a man, and about understanding how attraction works, and how it can blind both of you to what love truly is. So let's sit together in this space and begin to gently peel back the layers. I promise this will feel like a conversation you've needed for years. So let's settle in. This isn't just about pointing fingers or blaming women for being drawn to what you provide. No, this is about something much deeper, what it means to feel truly loved, not just admired for your success or respected for your achievements, but seen for the man you are beneath all of that. Because when you step back and look closely at so many relationships today, especially as we reach our 30s and beyond, there is this quiet transaction happening that no one speaks about openly. A man gives his time, his resources, his stability, and in return, he receives affection, presence, and sometimes even devotion. But what happens when he pauses that giving? When the career takes a hit, when he decides to step back from providing endlessly, when he simply needs to be? Does the affection stay, or does it begin to fade? You see, for so many men, the line between being loved for who they are and being valued for what they provide is blurry. And the tragedy is that we often reward the very behaviors that confuse this line. Society celebrates the man who can take care of her, spoil her, be her rock. But we rarely ask what happens if that man stops carrying all that weight for just a moment. Would she stay? Would she cherish you still? Would she recognize your worth if all the symbols of your value disappeared, the house, the car, the security you give her? That's why we must start here at this honest, often uncomfortable question: what does she actually love about you? Is it you, or is it the life you represent? And if you feel unsure, that doubt isn't something to ignore. It's an emotional signal worth listening to. You know, I often speak with men who describe this paradoxical feeling. She says she loves me, Esther, but it's like she needs me more than she loves me, and I don't know how to feel about that. And this is exactly where we need to go, because need is not love. When she needs you because you provide comfort, resources, or prestige, that is dependency, not love. Love is when someone stays even when you have nothing to offer but yourself. And here's the first point I want you to sit with. Women, like men, are conditioned by culture to see value in security. Security can look many ways: financial comfort, social status, emotional consistency. This isn't a criticism of women. This is simply a reality of human nature shaped by millennia of survival instincts and societal pressures. For many women, especially past a certain age, security feels like love because it promises stability, predictability, and safety. But this means that sometimes, without even realizing it, a woman can become attached to the idea of you, the provider, the achiever, the successful man, more than to the person you are behind. Those roles, it's important that you, as a man, understand this distinction. You must learn to recognize when a woman's attraction to you is primarily rooted in the safety you offer, not in genuine emotional intimacy. And that brings me to the next point that we must confront honestly. The kind of love you attract is shaped by the identity you present. If you lead with your value, if you show up in relationships emphasizing what you can provide, solve, fix, or improve, then you invite others, including women, to focus on that as the basis of their affection. When you're constantly framing yourself as the solution to her problems, the fixer of her life, you might find that she becomes attached to that role you play and not to you. Let's pause here for a moment. This isn't just about her. This is also about you, about your own self, worth, and the way you've been taught to express love. Have you defined your value by what you can do for her rather than by who you are? If so, then your relationships may repeatedly follow the same painful pattern. She falls for your value, your status, your protection, and eventually you feel unseen, misunderstood, even resentful. So what would it mean to show up differently, to present yourself as a human being, whole and imperfect, rather than as a provider first? Imagine what would happen if you stopped leading with what you can give and instead invited her to meet the man behind the success. Would she stay? Would she remain drawn to you? Would her desire endure if you were simply you? This is where so many relationships falter, because when a man stops performing the role that she unconsciously fell in love with, the connection begins to fray. She might not even realize that she was attached to the value he provided rather than to the essence of who he was. And that's why this conversation matters so much. Because when you start to notice this dynamic, you have a choice. You can continue to play a role that earns affection through performance, or you can take the vulnerable risk of inviting her to know you beyond your value, to love you as a human, not as a provider. As we continue, I want you to think carefully about the kinds of compliments you receive from her. Are they about you, your humor, your insight, your emotional presence, your kindness, or are they about your achievements, your income, your stability? The compliments tell a story. They reveal what she notices and sometimes what she loves most. So let's keep going, gently but bravely. Now that we've begun to untangle this sensitive dynamic, let's explore how to recognize the signs that her affection is tied to your value rather than your soul, and what you can do about it. Starting right now, I want you to think about this. When she looks at you, what exactly is she seeing? Not in the poetic sense, but in the deeply human way. When she praises you, supports you, or expresses desire for you, what is at the root of that affection? Does it feel like an embrace of your soul, your quirks, your vulnerabilities, or more like a reverence for the lifestyle you offer, the comfort you ensure, the image you help her maintain? These are not easy questions to sit with, but they are essential. Because at the heart of every intimate relationship is this unspoken negotiation. Are you loving me, or are you loving the way I make you feel about yourself? And this distinction, though subtle, determines whether you feel nourished or depleted in the relationship. So let's go deeper. The next sign that her affection may not be truly rooted in love for you is this subtle dynamic. Her love feels conditional on your ability to maintain your value. Think about this carefully. Does her mood, warmth, or attention fluctuate depending on how well you are doing in your career? Does she seem more affectionate when you are thriving and more distant when you are struggling? You may notice that when you are winning financially, socially, professionally, she seems fully invested, her admiration palpable, her desire present. But when you falter, when you feel tired or lost, when you are less impressive by external standards, her energy changes. Maybe she becomes less patient, maybe she's quicker to criticize, maybe you sense that you are disappointing her, even when all you've done is simply show up in your most human form. And what's so painful about this is that it can be subtle, a look, a tone, a sigh when you talk about your challenges. But you feel it in your bones when her love seems tethered to your performance rather than to your being. This conditionality reveals a deep truth. She may be invested in your value, the external things you represent and provide, more than in your humanity. Now, let me pause here and say this with care. This doesn't mean she is bad, shallow, or malicious. It means that in the dance of love and intimacy, we are all shaped by unconscious expectations. Women are conditioned to seek security as a proxy for love, and men are conditioned to provide in order to feel worthy of love. Both parties are caught in a cultural story that predates both of you, but you, as the man in this relationship, have an opportunity. You can start to recognize these dynamics and gently invite a different kind of connection, one that moves beyond performance. So how do you begin to shift this? First, by observing where you might have trained her, without realizing it, to value you for your achievements rather than your presence. Have you made her feel that your worth is tied to your success? Have you emphasized what you can do, fix, or earn more than what you can feel, share, or explore together? When we look at this honestly, many men come to see that they too have played a role in setting the terms of this unspoken contract. I will give you everything: protection, resources, comfort. And in exchange you will give me love. But this contract is brittle because it's rooted in roles, not in mutual appreciation for one another's humanness. And here's where things get even more tender. If you dare to stop performing for a moment, if you dare to show your sadness, your insecurity, yourself, doubt, how does she respond? This is perhaps one of the most telling signs of all. If her affection shrinks when you become vulnerable, if she recoils from your emotional honesty because it disrupts the image she has of you as the strong, competent, infallible provider, then you are not being loved fully. You are being loved for your mask, not for your face. I know that can be hard to hear. It touches a very primal wound in many men, the fear that if they drop the mask, they will not be lovable. But here's the thing. Intimacy begins exactly where performance ends. The relationships that nourish us most are not the ones where we are admired from a distance. They are the ones where we are embraced up close, even in our mess, even in our humanity, even in our frailty. And so my invitation to you is this: start noticing how she reacts when you're simply yourself. Do you feel safe to reveal your fears, your doubts, your imperfections? Or do you feel pressured to stay in the role of the provider, the achiever, the solver of all problems? Because if you don't feel safe to put the armor down, then her love may be directed more toward your armor than your heart. And here's another clue: when you try to set boundaries, when you say no, when you stop overgiving, when you take time for yourself, what happens? A woman who truly loves you will respect your humanity. She will understand that your worth is not measured by endless sacrifice or service. But a woman who is attached primarily to your value may resist your boundaries. She may guilt you, withdraw affection, or behave in ways that subtly punish you for no longer playing the role she expected. Again, this isn't about blame, it's about awareness. The more clearly you can see these patterns, the more consciously you can choose your path forward. And there's one more thing I want you to sit with before we go further. This dynamic of being valued for what you provide more than who you are is not just something that happens to you. It's something you participate in, often unconsciously. You might have been taught from a very young age that your worth as a man is proven through your utility, and so you show up in relationships with that same belief. If I am useful, I will be loved. But love doesn't work that way. Love is not earned through utility. Love is the gift we give when we truly see another person and allow them to exist as they are, without needing them to perform or produce. And so, I want you to ask yourself gently, how much of your identity in this relationship is tied to what you give, rather than who you are? Can you imagine a love where you are free to just be? That's where the next part of this conversation will take us. How to begin showing up differently so that you attract a connection that is based on genuine mutual intimacy, rather than performance and value alone. So now that you're beginning to see how this dynamic plays out, that quiet but powerful difference between being loved as a man and being valued for what you provide, I want to invite you even deeper into reflection. This is where the work becomes personal, where it shifts from observing her behavior to understanding your own participation in this dance. Many men reach this point and feel angry, even betrayed. How could she love my value but not truly love me? But it's essential to understand that we often set up the conditions that allow this pattern to thrive. If you've been taught that your role as a man is to give, provide, solve, protect, and that this is the very foundation of your worth, then of course you will unconsciously attract a dynamic where your value is central and your humanity is secondary. So I want you to ask yourself a tender but vital question. How have I made it easy for her to focus on my value instead of on me? When you look back at the start of your relationship, was your generosity one of the main ways you tried to win her affection? Did you show up as the man who could take care of everything, who could ease her worries, who could be the rock she leaned on? Did you avoid showing your own needs or vulnerabilities because you believed that would make you less attractive? These are not accusations. These are invitations, invitations to recognize that this is not just about what she did or didn't do. It's about what the two of you co-created, consciously and unconsciously. And here's where it gets truly challenging but beautiful. If you want to feel loved for who you are, you must begin by showing who you are. You cannot expect her to see your inner world if you keep it hidden behind a facade of capability and invulnerability. If you keep playing the part of the competent, successful, emotionally impenetrable man, she may never realize that there is a whole other landscape inside you waiting to be discovered. This means that intimacy starts with you first daring to show yourself your hopes, your fears, your uncertainties, and trusting that this is what will invite her to love you, not just your value. And yet, this is where the fear emerges for many men. If I stop performing, will she still stay? If I reveal my flaws and struggles, will she still find me attractive? If I stop being the provider, will she even want me? These are terrifying questions, but they're also freeing, because the only way to know whether her love is real is to let go of the performance. If her love diminishes when you stop performing, it was never real love to begin with. It was an attachment to your role, not to your person. And this is where the transformation happens, when you finally claim the right to be seen, known, and loved for who you are, not for what you give. I want you to picture what this shift would look like in your daily life. Imagine no longer feeling compelled to solve all her problems. Imagine no longer needing to rescue her from every uncomfortable emotion or situation. Imagine creating space for mutual support where she can hold you, listen to you, care for you without needing you to constantly provide reassurance, solutions, or resources. This is the heart of reciprocal intimacy, a relationship where love flows both ways, not because of what you give or earn, but because of who you both are: imperfect, vulnerable, human. And this leads to a beautiful truth. When you stop leading with your value, you give her the opportunity to reveal her true self too. When you step out of the role of the fixer, you invite her to step out of any role she's playing as well, and this is where authentic love begins. True intimacy is not found in performance, it is found in presence. Now, I want you to think about how you communicate your needs in this relationship. Do you express your emotional reality as openly as you meet hers? When you are tired, stressed, anxious, or hurt, do you tell her? Or do you hide these feelings behind a mask of competence because you fear being seen as weak? That mask is exactly what prevents you from feeling truly loved. You see, when you stop sharing your inner life, you rob her of the opportunity to love you. And when you replace emotional honesty with performance, you inevitably attract a love that is conditional, transactional, and brittle. But when you begin to reveal yourself gently, courageously, you open the door to being loved for real. And I must say this as gently as possible. If you discover that her love shrinks when you become real, if you find that she pulls away when you stop performing, that may be the most painful but liberating truth of all, because then you will know with absolute clarity that this relationship was not built on love, but on an attachment to your value. That clarity is a gift, even if it hurts, even if it leaves you standing alone for a while. Because from that place of clarity you can begin again wiser, more honest, and ready for a love that meets you, not just what you offer. So as we sit here together in this tender space, I want you to take a breath, a deep, honest breath, and ask yourself, what would it feel like to love and be loved without conditions, without performance, without earning affection by providing value? That is the kind of love you deserve. That is the kind of love we all deserve. You are not a product to be consumed. You are not a service to be delivered. You are a human being, worthy of love not because of what you give, but simply because you are. And if that means some relationships fall away, let them. What remains, or what comes next, will be truer, deeper, and more nourishing than anything you've known before. So now take this as your moment of permission, permission to stop performing, permission to start showing up as the man behind the achievements, behind the giving, behind the competence, permission to seek love that sees you, all of you, and know that even if it's scary, it's also the doorway to freedom. And so we arrive at this threshold. You have begun to recognize how your own patterns have shaped the dynamic, how cultural conditioning has influenced both you and her, and how your role as provider may have become a mask that hides your deeper self. But what does it really look like to change this pattern in practice? Let's sit gently with that. The transformation begins not with confrontation but with subtlety, with cultivating a new way of being in the relationship. This isn't about making declarations or accusations like, "You never loved me for who I am." No, that approach only invites defensiveness, confusion, pain. Instead, it's about you beginning to show up differently, a quiet but radical change that starts from within. When you stop leading with what you can give materially or externally, and instead bring your emotional truth forward, you alter the dance entirely. This requires courage, not the kind of courage it takes to climb a mountain or close a deal, but the courage to be soft, vulnerable, uncertain in front of another person. You might notice this shift when you share something simple yet real, your fears about aging, your confusion about a career decision, your sadness that you sometimes hide from the world. And then, and this is key, you watch closely. How does she hold space for that? Does she move closer? Does she soften too? Does she welcome this part of you that isn't perfect, but is profoundly human? This is how you begin to test not her loyalty, but her capacity to love the real you. It's not about withdrawing love to see if she chases. It's about revealing your authentic self to see if she stays, and I want you to notice something else as you do this work. Sometimes, even when a woman truly loves you, she may struggle to adapt at first. If she is accustomed to you always being strong, always having the answers, always providing, then your vulnerability may challenge her image of you. It may shake the dynamic she thought she could rely on, but here is the beautiful part. If she does love you, the whole you, she will grow with you. She will rise to meet this new version of you. She will learn, maybe imperfectly at first, how to cherish your openness, how to respect your boundaries, how to value not just your strength, but your softness too. This is where intimacy deepens in this shared evolution. And this is also where you learn something profound about her, whether she was attached to your value or whether she was always quietly waiting for you to invite her into your inner world. You see, many women crave this depth but feel locked out by the very armor men wear. They long to know your heart, but they get stuck loving the image you project. So by taking off your mask gently, You give her the opportunity to love you in a way neither of you may have known was possible. But and this matters, you must also be prepared for the possibility that she may not rise to meet you there. She may retreat, withdraw, or lose interest when the relationship no longer revolves around what you provide. And if that happens, let it, not out of resentment, but out of clarity, because her inability to meet your depth is not a reflection of your inadequacy. It is simply a sign that her capacity to love was limited to a particular version of you, the version defined by performance, provision, and status. The freedom you seek comes from accepting this reality without bitterness. When you recognize that she cannot love the real you, you also recognize that staying in that relationship would mean abandoning yourself. And that is a price far too high to pay. So what does this look like practically? It means starting small. When you feel exhausted, instead of pushing through so that she will see you as strong, you say, "I'm tired today, I need rest." When you feel unsure, instead of covering it up with bravado, you say, "I'm not sure how I feel about this yet." When you feel emotional, instead of retreating into stoicism, you allow yourself to express sadness, disappointment, frustration, not as a demand for her to fix you, but as an invitation for her to witness you. These small acts of honesty rewire the very foundation of the relationship. They create space for a new kind of intimacy, one that is no longer dependent on what you offer, but on who you are. And in doing so, you also send a message to yourself, "I am enough just as I am." You reclaim your dignity as a man who is worthy of love not because he performs, but because he is alive, real, present. This is the heart of emotional maturity, a willingness to face the fear that without your performance, love will disappear, and the faith to know that the right kind of love will stay. And what happens when you meet someone, maybe the woman you're with now, maybe someone new who is ready for this kind of relationship? You begin to experience something you may never have known before, being held, truly held, for all of who you are. That experience is radically different from being admired for your value. It's deeper, quieter, more nourishing. It creates a space where both of you can finally put down your masks and exhale into the freedom of being seen. So I invite you, even as we sit together here today, to take the first step not with drama or confrontation, but with gentle honesty. Begin to notice when you slip into the role of the provider at the expense of your authentic self. Begin to notice when you measure your worth by your achievements rather than your presence. Begin to practice saying what's true for you in small ways. These are not grand gestures, they are simple human shifts that change everything. Because at the end of the day, the most precious thing you can offer any relationship is not your value, it's your presence. And as we sit here in this tender reflection together, I want you to feel the quiet courage it takes to rewrite this story, your story. You are stepping out of a dynamic that has perhaps defined so many of your relationships without you ever consciously realizing it. The dynamic of being valued for your usefulness rather than being loved for your essence. That realization can feel heavy at first, like a betrayal almost. You might look back on past relationships with a new lens and wonder. Was I ever truly loved, or was I simply convenient, comforting, useful? But I invite you not to get stuck in that place. That is not where this work ends. That's just the place where the clarity begins. The next chapter is about freedom, about reclaiming your right to show up as a man who leads not with his wallet or his resume, but with his heart. About discovering that it is not just possible, but profoundly rewarding to build connections where performance is not required, where your worth does not fluctuate based on your output, where affection does not diminish when your achievements pause. And you may ask, how do I recognize the kind of woman who can meet me there? That's an important question, and it deserves your careful attention. A woman who can love you for who you are will not be obsessed with your titles, your income, your status symbols. She will see those things as details, not as definitions of you. Her admiration will come from your presence, your emotional availability, your capacity to listen, to share, to grow. You will notice it in the quiet moments when you are tired and she doesn't expect you to entertain her, when you express doubt and she sits with you instead of demanding that you fix it, when you take off the mask of competence and she leans in closer rather than pulling away. This woman will not panic when you establish boundaries, when you say you need time, space, rest. Instead, she will respect your need for self-care because she understands that loving someone means honoring their humanity, not extracting their utility. But even more importantly, you will notice it in yourself. When you are with the right person, you will feel safe enough to be vulnerable. You will not need to play a role. You will not need to exhaust yourself trying to earn love by being indispensable. You will simply be, and that feeling, the feeling of being loved not for what you provide, but for who you are, that is what intimacy is truly about. So this is where I want you to take this reflection and let it guide you forward. If you find yourself in a relationship where your value is central and your humanity is invisible, you have choices. You can begin to show up differently, invite deeper intimacy, and see how she responds. You can gently but clearly express your desire to be loved as a whole person, not just as a provider. And if she cannot meet you there, if the relationship cannot evolve, then you will know that it is not because you failed, but because the connection itself was built on something fragile. That knowledge is a gift because it allows you to walk away with your dignity intact, with your eyes open, and with your heart ready to receive a love that is more nourishing, reciprocal, and whole. And for those who are not in a relationship right now, this is your opportunity. Before you enter your next partnership, before you pour your time, energy, and affection into someone new, ask yourself, am I leading with my value again? Am I presenting myself as the solution to her problems, the fixer, the savior, or am I showing up as a whole man, vulnerable, curious, open? Because the way you begin will shape the entire relationship. If you lead with what you can provide, then your value will become the axis on which the relationship turns. But if you lead with your presence, your genuine self, then you give both of you a chance to meet in a deeper, more authentic way from the very start. And I know this path is not for the faint of heart. It requires a kind of strength that our culture rarely celebrates in men. The strength to be real, tender, emotionally honest. The strength to risk rejection in order to discover authentic love. But I promise you, there is nothing more rewarding. There is nothing more satisfying than knowing that the person who stands beside you does so because she sees you, not your status, not your success, not your bank account, but you. The human being, the flawed, beautiful, tender man who is worthy of love exactly as he is. And so I want to leave you with this encouragement. The next time you feel yourself falling into old patterns, overgiving, overperforming, overextending in the hope of earning affection, pause. Breathe, ask yourself, is this coming from love or from fear? Am I giving because I want to share myself freely, or because I am afraid she won't stay unless I prove my value? That simple pause can change everything, because it brings you back to yourself. It reminds you that your worth is not determined by what you provide. It reminds you that love, real love, is unconditional, or it is not love at all. So here's to you, the man who is ready to stop performing and start being. The man who is willing to trade admiration for intimacy, utility for authenticity, performance for presence. Here's to you discovering or rediscovering a kind of relationship where you can finally be yourself. A love that holds you, sees you, honors you, and as always, I invite you, if this resonates, if this touched something tender inside you, to share your thoughts in the comments. You're not alone in this experience. There are so many men quietly carrying these same questions, these same fears, this same longing. And I want this space here at the Intimacy Lab to be a space where those men can come together not as performers or providers, but as human beings who desire real connection. So if you feel moved, I would love for you to share your reflections below. Tell me what this brought up for you, what you are noticing in your own life, and what you want to create going forward. And if you found this valuable, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because we are going to continue these honest, vulnerable conversations together. Conversations about love, about masculinity, about intimacy that feels real, alive, mutual. You deserve nothing less. Here's to you, and to the love that sees beyond your value, to the love that sees you.